Several true crime updates came to light in the first half of 2022, with many cold cases solved through forensic genetic genealogy, also known as investigative genetic genealogy. This relatively new practice involves finding criminals via companies that collect consumer DNA samples for genealogy purposes. In this video, we are going to discuss about 5 cold cases solved in 2022 after decades. Number 1. The remains of Brittany Drexel were found. On May 11, 2022, the remains of Brittany Drexel were found in South Carolina. Drexel was last seen on April 25, 2009, while on a spring break trip with friends in Myrtle Beach, SC. The 17-year-old had left home in Chile, NY, without telling her parents, who were going through a divorce. On April 25, she left her Myrtle Beach hotel to visit a friend staying at another hotel. Surveillance footage showed Drexel leaving her friend's hotel that night, but never returning to her own. Authorities believe that Drexel's remains were buried on April 26, 2009, just one day after she was abducted. The coroner determined her manner of death to be strangulation. Number 2. Anita Knutson's roommate was arrested for her murder. In 2007, Anita Knutson was a student attending Minot State University in North Dakota. After she hadn't been responding to calls from her family, her father and 2 maintenance workers made their way into her apartment. They found Knutson's body. Investigators determined she'd been deceased for over a day. Knutson had been stabbed to death with a pocket knife, which was found at the crime scene. The window screen was cut out of her bedroom window, but nothing was stolen, and investigators suspected the screen had been cut after the murder to make the window look like an entry point. In March 2022, 15 years after Knutson's murder, police arrested Rice, 34 at the time, for the murder. Number 3. The missing daughter of a couple killed in Texas was finally identified. In January 1981, the remains of a man and a woman were found murdered in woods outside of Houston, TX. There was little evidence left at the scene, and they went unidentified until late 2021, when genealogical researchers tracked down the John Doe's sister. The young couple was then positively ID'd as Dean and Tina Klaus, who had recently relocated to Louisville, TX from Central Florida. Investigators were surprised when Dean's sister, after learning of her brother's death, asked, "Where's the baby?" While it's undetermined who killed Dean and Tina, and whether it was their killers who gave Holly up for adoption, family members have their suspicions. Dean was reportedly involved with a Jesus People organization before his death, after he moved to Texas, and his letters had stopped coming. His mother says she was contacted by a member of the organization about returning his car. She met with a group of Jesus People to retrieve the car and ask about her son, but says they told her he joined their group and was cutting off ties. Both families tried to report the couple missing, but were told by authorities that they probably didn't want to be contacted. Many questions still remain about the case, but Holly has reportedly been in contact with her newfound family members. Number 4. A young civilian found Maurice Chivarella's murderer. On March 18, 1964, the body of 9-year-old Maurice Chivarella was found at a dumping site in Hazleton, PA. Despite an exhaustive investigation by Pennsylvania law enforcement, Chivarella's killer was never found. That changed in February 2022, when 20-year-old Eric Schubert identified a man named James Fort as Chivarella's murderer. Schubert began researching his family's genealogy at age 8, and by the time he turned 18, police were asking for his assistance in solving cold cases. In the Chivarella case, Schubert was given the names of 2,000 potential suspects based on DNA profiles, which he then narrowed down to 4 before eventually confirming Fort to be the killer. Fort was a local bartender in Hazleton and would have been 22 when he murdered Chivarella. He died from natural causes in 1980, but his body was exhumed in order to verify he was the culprit. Number 5. Lee Rotatori's cold case murder was solved after 40 years. 40 years after 32-year-old Lee Rotatori was murdered in an Iowa hotel room, DNA testing confirmed her killer to be a man named Thomas O. Freeman. Rotatori had recently moved to Iowa from Michigan to take a nursing job and was staying at a local Best Western until she could find a place to live. Her body was discovered on June 25, 1982, after a wellness check was done when she didn't show up for work. Rotatori was reportedly killed by a single stab wound. DNA was taken from the crime scene, and in 2022, Genealogical research identified it as belonging to Freeman, who lived in Illinois. It was Freeman's own daughter who provided the DNA sample that ultimately solved Rotatori's cold case. Freeman himself was murdered only weeks after killing Rotatori. In October 1982, his decomposing body was found buried in a shallow grave along a highway in Cobden, IL, after being shot multiple times. He had been killed about 3 months prior to the discovery of his body, and investigators are looking into whether his murder was connected to Rotatori's. That's all for today's video. Subscribe our channel for more interesting and informative videos. Thank you.